Yeah, so I'm Caolan Mcnamara from Red Hat, and I don't work on the online, I work on the shared core. So seeing as I'm invited here and put up for free, I decided I'd better sing for my supper. So some of the things that I work on here are crash testing and the fuzzing. For crash testing, we're taking a whole big pile of existing documents and we're trying to make sure that they don't crash. We're trying to make sure that anybody that makes them crash, we find that pretty quickly, let them know and get these regressions sorted before we get to release. So the documents we use come from two main sources. We get them from public Bugzillas, which is the first script, and then more recently we get them from various public forums, which Cisco from the Document Foundation has discovered and tracked. And we have some other collections as well, like collections we got from Caolan back in the day, and some donations that we thankfully got from ForcePoint of Crasher documents. These numbers are out of date as to how many documents there are. I'll mention that later on. So we import them all, and in most cases we export them back out to multiple formats, and then re-import what we just exported and see if there's anything crash along those lines. We get core dumps and we get back traces, and we put them all up on a server to have a look at. This is just last year's crash testing. There's a big jump there, which is when the additional documents from the forums that I mentioned were put into the mix, and then the big decrease at the end as we finally sort out some of the major crashers. On that side of things, we can manage to do most of that because of AdFinus has given us some really significant hardware that we use to churn through these documents. Massive 48 core thing, huge memories, and it takes us about 3 days to get through them all. With the most recent additions to the forums, so the most recent documents we added back, recent documents we added back in there after the most recent forum was the Excel forum. It's a collection of 500,000 Excel documents. So the actual amount of documents we have now is coming close to 900,000, with 500,000 Excel documents come in, which has been challenging to deal with the outstanding ones we have left. But we're down to about 9 different categories of crashes. I put a summary onto the development mailing list about every couple of weeks, and they're categorized together, and you can see which ones are still crashing. So there's only about 9 categories left. About 4 of them are calc, and about 5 of them are writer, and progress is good. So that's the crash testing part of things. And the second set of things then is when we go out our way to find documents that have not existed beforehand and generate documents that will crash for us. These are particularly useful when somebody invents a new feature. What we find is that, for instance, the most recent one I think was the 64-bit zip. 64-bit zip code was put in on, let's say, a Monday. The Google OSS Fuzz stuff sees that there's been changes and then analyzes what way it can get the code to go down these new paths, and comes up with crasher documents on the Tuesday. So you get instant feedback as to documents that are can be generated to crash those things, whereas with the other case you have to wait till the end of the week before you find out that your changes have caused something like that. In this case, this is built on the Google side on their servers, whereas with the other one we build it on our side. There's a script that they call and builds. It's built twice a day. We have 48 fuzzer targets. These are built with various fuzzers and various backends, and each one of them targets a single file format. So when you multiply it together, you get this nearly 200 fuzzers built twice a day and churning away 24 by 7 by 365 for the last since 2017. It's built statically like the Android and the iOS case, so it's a kind of a complicated build, and it gives you a very large output, but it is something then that the Google people can move inside their network without requiring any configuration to come along with it. There's a link there to the seed corpuses we use that anybody else that has a relevantly interested project that wants to do fuzzing can use as their seed. This is the amount of crashes we have over the last years, huge numbers in the first year or two as we turn on the various fuzzing targets, and as time goes by, more and more fuzzers have been added to it, so the number increases, but we have all those bugs actually solved. So if you were to, I think it's this morning, we had 4 outstanding bugs, even though we have had to solve thousands of them over the last couple of years. Practical problems was that there's always going to be timeouts. There's 30 seconds before the fuzzing claims that there's a timeout, so you have to tune it carefully, keep your documents small. Various documents are compressed and they have vast decompression ratios, so you have to manage all of that. Out of memory is common as well. There's a lot of file formats that just are fundamentally able to use infinite amount of memories from a tiny source input. So again, a lot of tuning for a lot of these third-party things, the JPEG ones and so forth, to try and keep this under coverage. A coverage gap, and this is the last slide. Pretty much good coverage on fuzzing of the import. We're not doing a lot of fuzzing of the export. I think that's some place we need to look into, is that we need to start fuzzing particularly the PDF export, and that'll then exercise the writer layout, and it'll probably be quite challenging to deal with the amount of output we have from that, but it is some task that we'll probably get sorted in the next year or so. Okay, thank you.